and welcome to a live news from our newsroom here in Abuja. I'm Khadija Ibrahim. These are the headlines. Nigeria making steady progress on security and public services, Interior Minister. Deadly ambush in Niger, 14 soldiers killed as over 300 bandits overrun military camps in Mariga. Abuja bulldozes cassava, farmers displaced as urban expansion swallows green zones. The news in detail. Nigeria's Minister of Interior says the country is making steady progress on security and public service delivery, though there's still a long way to go. In an interview, the minister pointed to the deployment of the automated fingerprint identification system as a major breakthrough, helping security agencies better identify individuals and manage internal threats. He also noted that immigration officers are now better trained and more professional than before. He acknowledged that the president cannot solve all problems overnight, but said changes are happening. One example is the contactless passport application system, which now allows Nigerians abroad to renew their passports without visiting the embassy, a system introduced last year to ease diaspora services.
Looking at statistics and all indices, are we where we were? That should be our question, and the answer is very simple. We're not where we were, in 2023. We're making progress. Of course, we're not yet where we need to be, but we have to understand that security could be quite challenging, and it's not what you tackle overnight. It takes time, but of course, you keep making constant progress, and that's what this particular government is doing. With regards to my ministry, you know that we're in charge of border security and border control. And I'll tell you that before this government came on board, we never had any, in fact, profiling at our border posts were basically subjective and never objective. Profiling wasn't based on the principle of objectivity. And you know that any decision that you make on the premise of subjectivity is likely going to be laden with errors. But this government came and we introduced what we call the API solution, which is the Advanced Passenger Information System, in terms of our air borders. So such a way now that before any passenger comes into Nigeria, we have the opportunity of pre-profiling such passengers, and we can easily identify persons of interest. To make it a little bit practical, some couple of weeks ago, you know that about two people, one of the wanted Haram people, was actually arrested, and the other one, somebody who was on the Interpol red list, all the way from Italy, was apprehended, at the Lagos Murtala Mohammed International Airport. So these are things that never happened before, you understand, in terms of being able to secure entry and exit. That we've been able to do. Another thing that we have been able to do, or that this particular administration under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has also been able to do, is to ensure that our officers now are better positioned, better trained, to be able to for decision-making processes in terms of entry and exit.
In what is now one of the deadliest military ambushes in recent memory, at least 14 Nigerian soldiers were killed and 10 others wounded when heavily armed bandits launched a coordinated attack on forward operating bases on Dutse and Oka, deep within the forest of Mariga local government area in Niger State. These sources say over 300 assailants struck at night, overwhelming outposts in what appeared to be a premeditated, multi-pronged assault. The army described the attack as cowardly and treacherous and confirmed that the bandits looted weapons and briefly took over one camp before fleeing into the forest. Aerial reinforcements were deployed after the fact, but critics question why there was no actionable intelligence to prevent such a large-scale operation. This tragic incident has once again spotlighted the persistent and evolving security challenges in Nigeria's northwest, where vast rural landscapes, poor infrastructure, and delayed response have allowed criminal syndicates to gain strength, mobility, and audacity. In Nigeria's fast-expanding capital, farms are vanishing, replaced almost overnight by roads, residential estates, and shopping complexes. For years, farmers living in Abuja's lowland creek zones quietly cultivated cassava, vegetables, and sugarcane, serving as part of the city's under-recognized local food economy. But now, with little warning or compensation, bulldozers are clearing their plots in the name of development. From Jabi to Kamo and Mabushi, city dwellers are waking up to find formerly green patches transformed into concrete. Some of these areas are within what's supposed to be a protected green belt. They say they are building for progress, but our lives are not part of that progress, said Hajia Binta, a widow who lost her land in Galadimawa to a drainage expansion project. City officials argue Abuja must grow with its population, but critics are calling for a balance between infrastructure and sustainability, warning that losing local food sources and displacing vulnerable farmers will have long-term costs for both food security and social equity. History was made as Nigeria launched its first International Civil Service Conference, drawing participants from across Africa and the diaspora to discuss the future of public administration under the theme Rejuvenate, Innovate, and Accelerate. Held at Eagle Square, the conference is part of Nigeria's broader push to modernize its civil service and position itself as a hub for governance reform. The event was declared open by the head of the Civil Service of the Federation, Dr. Folashade Yemi Esan, and features keynotes from global institutions, panel discussions on digital transformation, and workshops on inclusive governance. President Tinubu is scheduled to deliver a national address outlining Nigeria's vision for institutional transformation. Officials say the conference is not just symbolic but strategic, aimed at aligning African civil services with 21st century challenges, from climate change and AI to post-pandemic resilience. For a country with deep bureaucratic gaps, the ambition is clear: fix the engine of government from the inside out. In a major policy breakthrough, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has signed into law 4 new tax reform bills intended to simplify, unify, and modernize Nigeria's tax system. The bills, covering tax administration, revenue services, and intergovernmental coordination, are part of a broader effort to stabilize the nation's economy, boost compliance, and plug revenue leaks. The presidency described the signing as a decisive move toward fiscal sustainability. Reactions have been mixed. While business leaders welcome the prospect of clarity and reduced bureaucracy, small and medium-sized enterprises are wary of potential compliance burdens. We support reform, but we need more support to adapt, said Sola Ojo, an Abuja-based SME operator. Experts believe this marks Nigeria's most ambitious tax restructuring since the creation of the FIRS. Whether it delivers increased revenue and economic inclusion or introduces new pressure on businesses will depend on its implementation and fairness across income levels. Aliko Dangote's refinery is taking a bold leap in reshaping Nigeria's fuel logistics by rolling out 4,000 compressed natural gas tanker trucks alongside a national network of CNG refueling stations. The goal: cut transport fuel costs, reduce reliance on diesel and petrol, and give Dangote's downstream business a competitive edge. The federal government has praised the initiative as visionary and a model for Nigeria's energy transition. But independent fuel marketers and industry analysts warn that the rollout, while innovative, risks tilting the playing field. Dangote's reach could end up monopolizing access unless the regulatory space remains competitive, said Mudiaga Oko, a downstream analyst. With over 100 refueling hubs slated for activation by August and the first 80,000-ton petrol shipment already heading to Asia, this move signals a seismic shift not just for logistics but for how Nigeria thinks about fuel distribution in a post-subsidy world. The US dollar is in its free fall, marking its worst first-half performance since 1973, with a 10.4% decline against global currencies. The dollar's tumble has boosted the euro, Swiss franc, and even developing market currencies like the rupee and rand. Bondholders are shifting toward non-dollar assets while commodity markets are beginning to feel the tremor. This is no longer just a technical correction, it's a political crisis of confidence, said Maria Tully, a currency strategist at BNP Paribas. US officials are working to calm markets, but the fallout could be long lasting. For countries like Nigeria, which peg reserves to the dollar, the implications are serious, affecting debt repayments, trade balances, and inflation linked imports. In a move aimed at bolstering anti-corruption efforts, the British High Commission has donated a high-grade forensic digital workstation to the Lagos office of the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC. The equipment is expected to speed up the processing of digital evidence in ongoing investigations, especially those involving cyber fraud, procurement corruption, and public finance leaks. ICPC officer says it marks a major upgrade in investigative speed and precision. The donation is part of the UK's long-standing governance support programs in Nigeria. We believe transparency is a cornerstone of development, said British High Commissioner. Technology will help the truth emerge faster. In response to the growing global concern over health misinformation, Nigeria Health Watch is convening a high-level webinar on July 8th titled Evidence-Based Frameworks for Networked Infodemic Management. The event brings together media, health, and technology stakeholders. Organizers say the goal is to design systems that counter false claims during public health crises, something sorely needed after Nigeria's experience with COVID-19 vaccine myths and polio disinformation. Misinformation spreads faster than any virus, said Dr. Ifeanyi Nsofo, public health expert. Participants from WHO Africa, Nigeria CDC, and tech platforms like X are expected. The hope? To equip countries with agile, real-time info systems that earn and keep public trust. State governors across Nigeria are facing mounting criticism for spending over 200 billion naira on official residence renovations and convoy expansions. While hospitals and schools remain underfunded, civil society groups and editorial boards have labeled the budgets wasteful and tone-deaf. At a time of rising military casualties and inflation-fueled poverty, many see this as misaligned governance. Governors are investing in marble kitchens while citizens die on bad roads, said activist Ayo of Budge IT. Calls are growing for budget transparency laws and citizen oversight panels to prevent such excess. The Senate is expected to summon several governors for fiscal accountability hearings in July. The Nikkei 225 surged by 1.5% as Japanese exporters cheered the dollar's weakening, which makes their goods more competitive abroad. South Korean and Indian markets also saw modest gains despite looming trade tensions. Investors are bracing for a July 9th deadline when the US may impose retaliatory tariffs on Chinese steel and semiconductors. Meanwhile, commodity prices remain volatile. Analysts caution that if the dollar slide continues and tariff wars erupt, Asian currencies may overheat, forcing central banks to intervene. For now, cautious optimism prevails. A temporary ceasefire brokered between Iran and Israel is holding, but tensions remain sky high after France shot down an Iranian drone headed toward Israeli airspace. The ceasefire follows nearly 2 weeks of escalating missile exchange and regional panic. US and EU diplomats are urging both sides to enter talks, though mutual distrust remains deep. Analysts warn that the drone incident, while contained, shows how fragile the truce is. This isn't peace, it's a pause, said David Stein, a Middle East security analyst. South Korean intelligence officials have revealed that North Korea may send military personnel or advanced weapons tech to support Russia in Ukraine by late July. This follows recent arms shipments from Pyongyang to Moscow, reportedly involving rocket artillery in exchange for satellite guidance systems. It confirmed it would mark the first direct military cooperation between the two nations in a European conflict zone, escalating global tensions. NATO officials are monitoring the development closely. It's a dangerous new alignment, warned Lieutenant General Markus Hempel of the German Defense Command. That wraps up our news for today. From our newsroom in Abuja, I'm Khadija Ibrahim.